TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.
Okay, thank you so much. Michael, in Canada, maybe funding is not really a problem to all of these big ideas, advocacy that we are doing. But in Nigeria, funding looks as a you know because we've worked together, of course, with NASAB and so you know that funding is a problem. How do we navigate the issues of funding to getting the information to the right people? Because people need to travel. Abbas mentioned something. He said you are not going as a missionary, so you need to go to places and you need funds. So how do we, especially in Africa, with the work you've done, how do we do this?
It's a very interesting question, and I've done a lot of thinking about this. In a way, Abraham Maslow said it best 100 years ago. You're not worried about the future of the planet if you don't have any food for the day. And you may not have any food for the day unless you've got a job to do. And once you've got a job to do, then you've got some money and you can eat and you can start to think about coming to the housing show, and you can start to think about where you're going to live. But generally, experience tells us until you're sorted at that basic level and you've got a few friends, you don't think about how to solve the wider problems. And I think this is one of the things that is so dispiriting about the whole American political move to the extreme right. These are people with money, and they could be using that money for so many good purposes. And this is the biggest frustration. We think that it comes back to wealth creation. So you come back to our friends in the energy industry. If somebody's got a mine that's throwing off money, the question is then, we want to see them have an environmental, social, and governance program. We want to see the ideas that we were talking about earlier, where there is an obligation to give money to the community. But while lots of good things grow on trees, money doesn't. And this is the thing, that we need to get the money from where the money is, and local is better, because Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they've already said America first. And what I hear from America first is all the rest of us are last. All the rest of us can go to heck. And so we need to find people that we can talk with. And this is where Nigeria has such a wonderful position within the whole of Africa. The whole city of Abuja, it's one of my, as they say, stump speeches for my other interest, the Great Global Reconvergence Council. The whole of Abuja is a sign of what oil can do for a country. But the challenge then, having got them oil money, is how to deploy it for the benefit of humanity.
Thank you so much, Mike. You said something very instructive. You said, while lots of good things grow on trees, money does not grow on trees. Dr. Asi, you've done lots of work. You went to India. You've done a lot of advocacy. And I know it required financing. How do we get the finance to the right people so these messages could be passed?
Thank you very much. Like Michael and Basima said, research is expensive, and doing advocacy is expensive too. And like over the years, we've discovered that within our environment, like Michael said, the environment we live today is an oil mill. But unfortunately, we've shut our senses to it, in the sense that we've just targeted our attention to a particular source of revenue. The environment, like he said, there are a whole lot of money, and for us to get funding, getting funding is a different thing. Getting people who are interested in environmental issues, especially in relation to health, is also another thing. And also getting people who are also interested, who are also willing, who understand the efficacy and the importance of climate change. Because now there's a notation we said, without a sustainable environment and sustainable human health, you cannot have a sustainable human health. I take that again. Without a sustainable animal health and environmental health, there is no way we can have a sustainable human health. So the question now comes because there should be a paradigm shift whereby people, well, I won't say government, where meaning government, organizations and NGOs who have this fund should tell in their direction into this area, because the AMR we are talking about, antimicrobial resistance, is as a result of the lapses within the environment. Because when we have a good sustainable animal health and good sustainable environmental health, I don't think we'll have any problem with our human health. The question now is, how do we get funding? Like Michael has said, Trump is saying America for ourselves. Now, is this not call for like the Bible says, for us to re-examine ourselves as Africans, as individuals? Let's look back home within ourselves. Let's sit down and rethink on how we can get funding. There are people within the environment who have this fund. It's just for us to intensify our advocacy, intensify like-minded people coming together to work together. Like the NGOs we've been working with didn't just start within a day. They started within months, within years. They build up momentum, gather funds. So like we are 4 of us here in the room here. With like minds, we can come together, pull up our resources together. No matter how little it is, we can pull up those resources together and do some little advocacy. Because by the time you make a move, when one life is changed, the news will spread. And when that news spread, it turns around to bring about a sustainable change within the environment.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go on a short break. And when we come back, the conversation continues. This is Housing TV Africa, and the program is Green Housing.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts. On Facebook, Housing TV Africa. On Twitter, Housing TV Africa. Instagram, Housing TV Africa.
All right, so welcome back. This is Green Housing on Housing TV Africa, and today we are looking at a very wonderful conversation. We are talking to experts as we look to celebrate this year's World Wildlife Day, and we know that animals are so important to us. They help us in decomposition. They help us in companionship. I know there are people that live with animals. They are friends with animals. The animals keep them company. So there's a lot we could actually do with animals. And even some animals help us with the clothes we wear. You know, they provide raw materials and all of that. So today we're looking at how we could have a sustainable environment going forward. And we know that the animals are also important members of this environment. It does not mean because we are higher animals, we have the manpower, we have the strength, that we should not count them and say, okay, we can just do anything. No, there's a lot that we could actually do. So we have this panel of wonderful, intelligent people joining us from all over the world to make sense of our conversation. Gentlemen, thank you. Gentlemen and lady, I think we have about 8 people on the call, but we have 4 speakers. We have 2 gentlemen and a lady. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation that we're having. We're actually making good sense. So the topic says wildlife conservation financing, investing in people and planets. We've talked a lot about investing in people, the work we do, the support we could get, and all of that. Let's come back home now and talk about the real-time investment in knowledge, because I think there's a knowledge gap between the people in the rural communities, especially the rural communities. For instance, we've been talking about EV, transitioning, green energy, solar system, all of these things. it doesn't really make sense to somebody in the rural community. How do we bridge this knowledge gap? Mike came up with something very interesting. NASA going to workplaces, teaching people in workplaces. But away from that, there's a language barrier. Some people may not. How do you explain climate change to somebody who's in the village? How do you explain environmental degradation to somebody who's in the village? I know that naturally it is not true that Africans do not conserve animals. It is not true because in my village we have this totem where we don't eat monkeys, and it's just known by everybody in the village that we don't eat monkeys. They say it's a taboo. Yes, they may have used some things that are not true. They say if you eat monkey, you will die. There's no scientific proof to that. But this was just ways to conserve and protect the environment. So let's talk about the knowledge gap. How do we leverage and get to fulfill the knowledge gap? I'll start with you, Abbas.
So as one who has been a part of community engagements for a while, one of the things that could really help to promote wildlife education and awareness at rural areas would be reaching out to people who speak the language of the people. For instance, you have an engagement in a rural community where you understand that you do not know their laws, you do not know their customary or traditional beliefs, but then you have to find a way to get someone who is known in the community or who is respected, or a person who could link you up and possibly bring the message down to the level of the people. And I did mention that all of this requires financing. Engaging people from the community level will require some form of, incentivization and commitment from our end. I did hear when Mr. Victor said we have to look inward. Of course, we have to really look inward considering the shrinking aid space. But again, do we have the will? Is the passion there? Do we truly understand that everything we do falls back to the environment, and whatsoever we do to the environment falls back to us? So I think we should take a top to the bottom approach, because you figure out that people who have more money to finance most of these projects are situated in the city centers. Most of them do not live in rural communities. So we can start from the rural communities, we streamline the messages, and then we get to talk to these people to either promote the message at the rural level by funding or partnering with other organizations. Now, coming down to the rural level, you cannot also tell people to stop doing something that they have been used to when you have not provided an alternative for them. A very viable alternative would be promoting agriculture, especially the area of cattle rearing, providing farmers, local farmers, with real structures and finances to help upskill and upskill their productivity. We have fish farmers, we have cattle rearers, we have chicken rearers, we have goat rearers. How are their businesses faring? There are lots and lots of people who have really gone into the cattle rearing area of agriculture, but can rarely fund or upskill their businesses to cater for 100 persons in the community. So one of the ways this can be done is if we push this area of agriculture that sees to it that the consumption is really financed and is taken care of, so as to cut off persons who go into the communities and rural areas to hunt down and poach animals to sell to people. That's one way, one viable way this can be achieved. Again, behavioral change is not something that comes in a day. You have to give it time. It's an incremental step, one after the other. What you need to do is you have a success story, you share, you use it as a point of reference to persons who are still heavily engaged in this thing, telling them that you can do without this thing. You can actually be healthy if you do not engage in these things. Thank you.
Okay, so Mike, I'm coming to you now. There is this pride that comes especially for people in the US, UK, Canada, and other developed countries. They come to Africa for vacation and they go hunting. We've seen lots of videos. I don't want to mention people's name, but I know you know some of those things that I'm talking about. Where they go hunting, they kill maybe an elephant and all of that. They just do that honor hunting. And recently we had about truckload of animals and all of that. Animals that are going towards extinction being caught at the seaport. It was about being exported to Europe. So Europe becomes a market for this for the trade of animals. People poach animals from Africa, move into Southern Africa, and get to move into Europe. There's actually a trade that is going on, and it seems to be financed by people where you are, or some of them just do it for leisure, for honor, and all of that. Can you talk to that and how we can actually arrest that?
Yes, certainly. I think it's absolutely wonderful to shoot an animal with a camera, not with a gun. I cannot understand the mentality of the trophy hunters. I think in their head, they are seriously disturbed. I know the economic pressures that there is a wonderful safari type animal visiting, sustainable type holiday program that many countries in Africa are good at doing. And this is good. You bring in tourism, it's green tourism. And this is a step in the right direction. But the trophy hunting is very, very difficult. I cannot understand that. It's a small number of people, and I'm worried that the American side is making more of this kind of trophy hunting, wildlife kind of shooting. Man controls the environment. I think it's very, very bad. Now, in the middle is the person who thinks they need money, the ivory tusks, the trade in it. That's not as bad as killing the animal for no reason at all. The money that you get from killing an animal, well, there is a trade-off there, and it's a shame. I think it's unfortunate that there are countries in the world where there is an interest in certain things. But my view on that one, I think, is very clear. I think trophy hunting is very, very bad, and I'd like to see it banned throughout the world.
Thank you so much. I come to you, Dr. Asisi. Let's talk about habitat restoration and biodiversity projects. There's a lot of projects going on in Abuja. In fact, the minister of Abuja is saying Mr. Projects, lots of projects, roads everywhere. And this organization is everywhere across Nigeria. The last time I visited my village, I was shocked. The forest is shrinking. Where are these animals going to be living? Let's talk about that. Urbanization seems to be destroying the habitats for our animals.
I think in one of my remarks, I said it. Deforestation or the urbanization is one of the problems that is causing serious pandemic in the world today. How? Now, for instance, let me just keep this in. Most of us don't know that bat has over 100 benefits to humans. Now, when you look at an environment where bats inhabit, you can't find any insect. You can't find mosquito there because those bats feed on those insects. And the waste of bats is one of the best manure you can ever have in the world. But unfortunately, most people don't know that. Now, going into that, and bat inhabits over millions of pathogens. Why we're having the COVID-19, the COVID and the various COVID that we have today, the mpox and the red, is because these animals' habitat has been disturbed. They are humans like us. It's just like, for instance, somebody just come, maybe a government just wake up one morning and bring a tractor and demolish your house. You are homeless. You don't know where to go. So you will be frustrated, and so also are animals. So these habitats are where those animals live. They take their normal routine as human. So as human come in, for instance, human now coming now to distort the habitat, what they need to do, they move into where humans are staying. And for instance, like the bat, for instance, and as the moment you distort a bat, a forest where bats are inhabiting, they don't have anywhere to go. The next thing you see, they live within where the animals, where the humans are living. Either if there's a tree in that compound, that's where they live. Or maybe up within the roof, the ceiling, they live there at night. In the morning, they go off. At night, they come back. So whatever pathogen, whatever diseases or viruses they inhabit, they release it within that geographical environment. So at that particular point in time, everybody residing within that environment are at serious risk because of the invasions of these animals. So for us to stop this, there is a need for us, even if we want to bring urbanization, what we need to do, like as Mike has said, we need to do what? We need to conserve these animals. You can get the rangers, get these animals and conserve them in a good environment, in a good place whereby they can live. I think there's a white lady who came into Nigeria some years ago and discovered where chimpanzee are being disturbed. What she did, she got a very big acres of forest. Then what she now did, got people, then they now migrated all those chimpanzees and all those animals into those reserves. She lived with them, nurtured those animals there, and those animals were doing well without any human disturbance. So what we need to do, because as we are talking about urbanization, we need to also look at the disadvantage of this urbanization, because as you are distorting the habitats of the animals, in return, you are also bringing in more problems to the human race than what you think you are doing. So,
okay, guys, yeah, that is the size of our program of this webinar for today. But before we go, I'd like to get the last words, maybe a call to action, and some of the things you want to ask each other questions. I have the time. This is for you. You want to do some interactions. 2 minutes. I'll start with you, Abbas. Do you want to ask any of the people on the panel questions? Do you have any questions?
Ubong, very quickly, I just wanted to make a quick contribution regarding urbanization. So one of the things that we could do is ensuring that when we are planning the development of certain cities and places, it's important to always incorporate green areas and reserving certain places like maybe forest zones, forest areas, to ensure that these wildlife are promoted and they are given an opportunity to still live within their habitat. So that's the contribution I just want to ensure that people begin to advocate for maybe natural or artificial forests to be located in urbanized areas as well. Michael, I really hope to interact with you after the session. And Mr. Victor, great work you're doing, especially in the area of health and environment. I'm really, really impressed. I got to learn a few things because of your interaction today. Got to know about the importance of having bats in our environment, how they keep off insects and lights. So thank you.
Okay, Mike. Mike, over to you. You talk to us.
It's fascinating to me that there is so much traveling around, and all you young people must be free to travel the world, as I have had the chance to do. but it's bad for the environment.
Yeah, the carbon footprint.
We've just got to be very careful about that. Now, here's an African idea to share with you. There is a wonderful organization. I have no interest in it of a financial nature whatsoever, nor would I qualify as one of their staff. It's called Solar Sister. And you can follow them at Solar Sister on Twitter. And this is basically across Africa, women on bicycles, environmentally sound bicycles, with micro solar products. You take those into the villages, and suddenly, you know, something that is there, a light, they have it outside during the day, inside the child can study in the evening when it's dark. This has a transformative effect in terms of cutting through. You've shown somebody something rather than preach at them. And they see that this is one of the products that is not only good for the environment, it's a lot cheaper as well than actually buying the electricity. So that's my tip for anyone here at Solar Sister. Have a look at these micro portable solar products. And
Thank you so
wonderful
much.
talking to the two of you. And of course, Ubong again, this is a great get together. I suppose I've got to make a very quick point, which is clearly at the wonderful show in July, there will be some green charities and there will be a green presence there. And this will be a chance for us to talk to the house builders about the idea of the cityscape planning and so on, and to make sure we have environmentally attractive communities going forward.
Thank you so much, Mike. Always a pleasure talking to you. Dr. Asi, please, you want to talk to any of your colleagues on the panel, or your last words on the show?
What I would say, my parting words, the environment, the human, and the animals are interconnected under one earth. So each of them are interrelated and they work hand in hand. So for us to have a sustainable health, for us to have a sustainable climate system, for us to have a sustainable environment, we need to have all these intact. And in our own little corner, let's try to see how we can do advocacy, creating more awareness about sustainable human and animal health. Because if the animals are sustainable in terms of health, if the environment are also healthy, the rate of pandemic, the rate of disease among humans will reduce drastically. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody on the panel. And that's the size of our show.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.